Hello everyone, hi. Got a really lovely day here, so I'm grounding myself. I'm out in the garden doing a little bit of work. I've got quite a few plants here that are ready to be planted out, so I'm taking advantage of the weather. Just pop that in. There now. So we've been really busy working to get the course Herbal Health for Women ready, and it's almost ready. But I've also been busy working on another course, which is, it's two workshops in one. It's finding a plant ally and making a flower essence. And they're both short, simple courses coming as a little package because I think they're really important if you want to develop a deep relationship with your garden, with the plants, with the trees. And it's a really wonderful way of working in nature and creating those relationships. So that's up on the website now if you're interested in that kind of thing. And I hope you enjoy it if you are. So a few weeks ago, we went off to the northeast of England to Yorkshire because I'd been asked to facilitate a hand fasting, and it was a beautiful ceremony and we had a lovely time. But then we went to the city of York to visit it. It's a medieval city. It's still got ancient streets, and the ancient walls of the city are there as well, not to mention York Minster. So I thought you might be interested in having a look at it because it's got a fascinating history. We were even able to walk the walls of the city. After the hand fasting, which was a lovely celebration, a lovely experience, we enjoyed the local colour of the local village, and we enjoyed the beautiful serene peace of the Yorkshire countryside before taking a train into the city of York. The first thing I spotted getting off the train was this beautiful wildflower meadow, little garden in the middle of the city. I always think it's interesting to see what cities do with their green spaces, and I think York was a lovely city in terms of the green because it has beautiful parks and lots of trees all around, as we discovered when we took a walk around the walls of the city. So the city began in 71 AD as a Roman settlement. It was known as Eboracum, which is the place of the wild boar. Look, that would have been outside. All those beautiful trees. And look at this, ivy-leaved toadflax on the wall. So we've got an ancient wall and we've got this new, fresh, beautiful growing herb. It just reminds us that cities can come, empires can fall, and nature just carries on. Walking the walls of the city, we can see the trees and we can look down into the gardens that people have. And it's just so interesting to be able to do that, to peep into people's gardens. And being up high, we have a great vantage point of the city. We can see York Minster on the skyline from almost every point. There is such a sense of history everywhere. But going back to the city, after the Roman Empire declined, York went into a decline as well. And then the Vikings came in the 9th century and they called it Jorvik, which again meant something to do with wild boars. And the Vikings had close ties with the Vikings in Dublin as well, which I find very interesting. Olaf Cuaran was one of the Dublin kings who had also ruled York at an earlier time. The Christian leaders at the time were shocked and disgusted by the personal hygiene presented by the Vikings because they were so clean. They washed their faces every day, they combed their hair and beards, and they bathed every Saturday. They liked to wear clean clothes and to wear lovely jewellery as well, so they turned out well. Christian churchmen were only bathing once a year at this time, and they found the Vikings to be ungodly and full of vain posturing. but they were also concerned that the women folk were finding the Vikings more attractive. So there were lots of combs and tweezers and razors and other items of personal hygiene found in archaeological digs. The buildings in this ancient city are both medieval and Georgian, and when you see the old buildings leaning out into the street, it's because you could only build your property within a certain footprint. So when people wanted more space, they would build up and outwards. Hence the buildings tend to appear as if they're leaning over towards each other. It was a way of getting around rules and regulations of the city planners in their day. So the oldest part of the city is the shambles. And this is an area where lots of tradesmen were working, and particularly meat vendors and butchers. And the shambles is actually an Old Norse word which is derived from flesh shelves. So you can imagine all the meat that was sold here and the animals that were butchered here. And Margaret Clitheroe lived here. She was one of the only English martyrs. She was born a Protestant in the Elizabethan times, but as a young adult she converted to Catholicism. And because she became a Catholic, she stopped going to church. And so she became a recusant and was fined 12 pennies every time she missed the Anglican church service. And she was even imprisoned a couple of times. Then she became more devout, and she sent her eldest son to France to train as a priest. And the authorities began to question his whereabouts, and they came and raided the house. She had already spent time in prison and had her third child in prison. And when they raided the house, someone's child gave away the priest's hole. So she was arrested for sheltering a Catholic priest, which was absolutely against the law at this time. And she was going to be brought to trial, but she refused to make a plea of guilty or not guilty. She refused to stand before a jury because she said, having made no offence, I need no trial. She didn't want to be tried because it would have been dangerous for her children, because they would have been called to testify. And if they didn't testify to suit the authorities, they may have been tortured. So she didn't want that to happen. And she also believed in what she was doing. So she refused to stand trial, and they decided to execute her by pressing. This meant that they took her to a public place, stripped her, laid her down on top of a rock which was the size of a man's fist, and then they put her own front door on top of her. To press her then, they piled up rocks and boulders to about 700 or 800 weight and pressed the life out of her. She was also expecting her fourth child at this time, and the execution took place on Good Friday. So, I don't know if these people really were Christians. Guy Fawkes was also a convertant to Catholicism, and he was involved in the Gunpowder Plot. He was hung, drawn and quartered for trying to blow up the Houses of Parliament when they were expecting a Protestant King James I to be in attendance. But with all the walking and talking, it's time for lunch. So we are in this lovely old pub. I'm sat by a window which was once the window going into a jail. And like most of the pubs in York, it has its own ghost. But you cannot visit York without going to the Minster. York Minster is the most beautiful cathedral. It began life in 627, was built and rebuilt several times, and they're still working on it today. Initially it was built as a small wooden church in time for the baptism of a local king's son, and then, as I said, it was rebuilt over the centuries. It had a sister church which was dedicated to Alma Sophia or the loving mother of wisdom, or maybe it was the divine feminine or the feminine principle, but unfortunately that church is no longer with us. But the minster was always being burned and rebuilt, and the rebuilding for this minster started in 1220 and took 250 years, finally being declared finished in 1472. It's known as a minster because that's an old Anglo-Saxon word for a church of substance and importance, and it is a collegiate church, which means it is a teaching church. But it is a cathedral because it is also the seat of the bishop. It holds the most richest collection of stained glass in the country, and the rose window that you saw earlier commemorates the War of the Roses. In fact, to me, this whole building commemorates war and patriarchal power. It's supposed to celebrate the greatness of God, but it seems to me to be celebrating the greatness of kings and bishops, warriors. You can climb the 285 steps to the tower and get closer to God, and then when you're up at the top you can see the beautiful expanse of the city out to the countryside beyond. It's an incredible and beautiful building. It's an example of great human endeavour and achievement, and to think of all the generations of families that would have worked on it. The masons and the stone carvers and the stained glass window artisans, all of these people who would have had their sons working with them and their grandsons coming up and working with them, and their great-grandsons and their great-great-great-great-great-great-grandsons. Generations of people over 250 years to create this monument. And apart from all this amazing sense of history, the best part of York Minster for me was discovering the carvings of the Green Man just outside the chapter house. These carvings offer a hint of nature and reveal a continuing appreciation for the green and vital life force that our earlier ancestors truly understood. I hope you enjoyed that little trip to York. I don't think I have enough room to put these peas in here, so I'm going to have to find somewhere else. So I hope you'll give the new course, the Plant Ally and Making a Flower Essence, some consideration. You might enjoy it, and there's a link in the box below. And I'm going to get back to finishing the women's course, Herbal Health for Women, as soon as I've planted these. So I hope you have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next Sunday. I hope you enjoyed today's film. If you did, subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. And have a look at the website danusirishherbgarden.com for more information about us and about the herbal medicine courses I offer and the Wise Woman Way training. And if you go to the shop, you can find the books, the weed handbooks and other herbal goodies. And remember, we put a new film out every Sunday. So looking forward to seeing you next week.